pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
DeZiel.
Here.
Bruck.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
All right, the first thing we have tonight are a couple officer presentations. Chief, we've got some ceremonial swearing in, and I'm going to let you kind of decide how you want to do this first, and I know the judge is going to be coming up here.
Yeah, do you have a preference on where you want to do it, behind the podium? Sure.
Back here.
Hillary? So the first one we're going to recognize today is Hillary Lundberg, who has been promoted to sergeant with our department. Hillary is a 21-plus year law enforcement veteran, 8 years, give or take, in Austin, Texas, and then the last 13 years here for the Hudson Police Department. She served our department as a patrol officer, obviously, a field training officer, and most recently a detective. She will be assigned as a sergeant to the investigative unit, so she will supervise all the detectives on the department. One last thing of note, she is the first female supervisor of the Hudson Police Department.
I, Hillary Lundberg, having been appointed as Sergeant for the City of Hudson Police Department,
as Sergeant for City of Hudson Police Department,
affirm that I will support
the
Constitution of the United States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
The next one I would like to recognize and basically introduce to the community is a new hire of ours, Tyler Hiller. Tyler is originally from central Wisconsin area and has been in this area for about a year or so. He also serves our great state and country in the Army National Guard, and he was hired November 1st was his start date.
I, Tyler Hiller,
I, Tyler Hiller,
having been appointed as patrol officer
for
the City of Hudson,
the City of Hudson,
affirm that I will support
the
the Constitution of the United States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you, and thank you for joining our police force. Well, Tyler, I guess Hillary, you've been here a while. Okay. Fine. Yep. Just wait for these guys to just come out. Waits too. Is he asking for money tonight, or?
It's expensive.
Pretty much cleared the room, huh? Yeah.
Us people,
Slide right through everything else.
Nothing bad happened.
All right, next up we have, once again, we brought Jim Fry in, and we have with us Assemblyman Shannon Zimmerman. If you guys would come on up this way, I'd appreciate it. And as you recall, Jim was given an award here before through the state. Recognition through Shannon's office, Representative Zimmerman's office. And he was, when we did the presentation here last time, Shannon had fallen ill and was not able to be here to participate. So we brought him back in, and he's got a few things he wants to say. And did you want the microphone here? Or maybe you could use mine.
Yeah, we can stand. I'll lift the microphone up and I'll try and speak loudly. Well, first of all, Mayor O'Connor and Councilman, thank you very much for having me here today. And these are the days that are the best days of all the things, certainly as a legislator, that we get to do. So yeah, we had a wonderful experience in late October, but I wanted to share with the people of Hudson, really what happened in Madison, because as we all very well know, sadly, we don't always get Madison news in Hudson, Wisconsin. That can be a little frustrating, but news like this needs to be shared, sincerely. So there are 99 assembly districts across the state of Wisconsin, population of the state, 6 million people, and Jim Fry is now one of 99 recognized as a first responder of the year. And when I was, we sent out nomination requests, and I was doing my follow-up calls, and I called Scott St. Martin. And within seconds, the enthusiastic reply on the other end of the phone made it clear that Jim's a guy I got to read about. I got to learn more about him. And so Scott would send down the information on Jim's 43 outstanding years of service to the community, and it was just obvious, certainly to me, that there was nobody more deserving of the recognition that Jim has earned here and so forth. So a couple things. First of all, we are blessed, I think, in this area with outstanding law enforcement, first responders, firefighters, EMS, all the above. And we really can't take that for granted, because I'm always reminded that it's folks like Jim and Scott and the rest of the team here that are running into the buildings that everybody else is running out of, and that's never lost on me. So in recognition, we did two things. So when Jim came down in late October, we presented Jim with this legislative citation where he is forever recognized in the state of Wisconsin for his outstanding accomplishments. So I will once again give this to you a second time, Jim. Thank you. Thank you. And then these are the things, when I do Eagle Scout ceremonies in this community, we reserve these sort of things for very special events like this as well. And we flew a flag over the state capitol in Jim's honor. And it wasn't ready the day of, but Jim, we've got it now. And so this flag was flown in early November, recognizing your great accomplishment, Jim. So here's a flag that was flown to the state capitol also in your honor, sir. Thank you. Councilman, again, thank you for allowing me to intrude on your evening. And Jim, on behalf of Hudson, the entire St. Croix Valley, thank you for all of your great service. And Lori, thank you, because we all know it's not just the person that's working it, it's the whole family, and you're recognized as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Passes?
Thank you.
Does have to be turned off?
I don't know. All right, next up, citizen comments.
You turned it on, so.
Once again, this is your opportunity as citizens of the city of Hudson, you have to be residents, to talk about any issue that is not currently on the agenda. Just as a reminder, if you are here to talk about something that is on the agenda, if it's important enough that the council members think that we need to have a public hearing on it, we can do that, remove it from the current agenda, hold a public hearing, in which time everybody can comment on that particular item. Please keep your comments short as possible, and please try not to repeat other people's comments. Having said that, is there anybody here that would like to make a comment? Anyone that would like to make a comment? Anyone that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Next up, consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from the November 15th, 2021 regular council meeting. Approve payment release of $190,000 to MI Homes of Minneapolis LLC as per the approved escrow agreement dated December 23rd, 2015 for the satisfactory completion of the obligation to complete the construction of Ward Avenue Extension. Approve council claims of $1,467,803.41. Approve the purchase of 2 squad cars for 2022.
Becky, can we pull that one, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Approve the purchase of fire department support vehicle.
Becky, can we pull that one too, please? Thank you.
Approve the sailboat mooring policy and set the 2022 sailboat mooring fee at $575. Accept the 2021 street maintenance project and authorize final payment. Accept South Point and Summit Ridge Development Street and utility improvements with condition of completion of the punch list items. Approve the personnel policy update. Approve the 2022 Common Council meeting schedule. Approve election inspectors for the 2022-2023 term.
Would you please pull that one?
Approve no parking for school bus loading at Trinity School. Approve Hudson Physician staff authorization to amend plat, development agreement, easements, and approval of the documents.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items 6.4, 6.5, and 6.11. Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Consent agenda as amended is approved. Item 6.4, approve the purchase of 2 squad cars for 2022.
Thank you for pulling this. I would like to just first say, of course, I certainly support purchasing vehicles for our police department. I would like us to consider moving forward with the hybrid options. And I would like to point out 2 main areas for us to consider. One is the financial implications, and then the second is honoring our comprehensive plan. So first off, from a financial perspective, I understand that there would be, I'm sorry, am I supposed to, okay. From a financial perspective, while I understand that there's an initial savings by moving forward with a gas engine of approximately $7,000 per vehicle, I would like to note that on information that's on the Ford website with respect to the police interceptors, that on an annual basis, the fuel savings is $3,500, and that assumes that the price per gallon is $2.75. So, and that does not even begin to address the savings that it does from a carbon emissions and what the positive impacts that is on our air. So if we took into consideration that is on an annual basis of a savings of at a minimum of $3,500 over a 2-year time frame, we would have recouped that initial expense of $7,000. When I did have some exchanges with our chief about the average life of these vehicles in our police department, they're roughly 7 to 8 years. So if we take that $3,500 and we times it by 7.5 just to kind of average, that's $26,225. But if we just subtract that $7,000 that it would have cost us up front, that's a savings of $19,250 per vehicle. So that would, over the life of those 2 vehicles, save us close to $40,000. So it makes financial sense to me. But also equally important is from our comprehensive plan. In our comprehensive plan, we talk, our residents, our constituents, our taxpayers have said that one of their core principles that they want us to follow when we make decisions is about environmental resiliency. In that, it discusses green infrastructure. This is an easy way we can deliver to our residents what they have asked us to do. Therefore, I'd like to make the motion that we proceed with purchasing the 2 hybrid vehicles with the police department.
Got a
Second.
motion?
Second.
Second, motion and second. Further discussion?
I did have a question. You said the 3,500 cost savings. What is that based on mileage?
It's based on a blend of both running mileage, so driving, and the idle time that I heard the chief talking about earlier.
Gotcha. Do you know what number though? You know what I mean? Like what?
What
How
cost
many
per
driving
gallon?
miles
So
in a
the
year?
cost per gallon that they have used, as I had said, was $2.75. So I have it in an email. Let me just see if I can pull it up. Let me just see here. It's based on an average of 343 gallons per year. So these are just general estimates, typically in a police department. This is strictly right from the Ford Interceptor site on police interceptors.
Do you want to see the form you're talking about? I have it right here.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Yep, this is it. This, I don't know, I've seen this, so I don't know if other people would like to see this too. And I'd be happy. Maybe we can just pass that around. And we could also email this out too. I can forward it on to Aaron as well.
Where do you suggest we get the $6,000 over cost?
Well, I have a few thoughts. I don't know what the status is on the ARPA fund, if that's an option. I also was wondering, I know a few times in my time here, I've heard us use discretionary funds. So I don't know if there's, or some funds that aren't designated.
Well, and I guess what I would recommend, if the council is going to move forward with it, we would use our undesignated capital for the upfront costs, and then we'd look at offsetting back from the savings from the police actual budget that we had for it. So we would take the undesignated capital, but pay it back then out of police if it's the savings generate what they're supposed to generate.
Jeff has done his budget work. I don't want to see him penalize that $6,000 within his budget.
Right. So we would do it out of the undesignated capital fund instead. And then, like I said, as we budgeted X amount, and so when we look at these savings coming back in, we would then do a transfer back to that undesignated fund to keep that at a certain level. So, yep, we can do that.
Do you need an amendment to the motion for that?
I would say if you're gonna make the motion to do it, then I would say yes to use the undesignated capital funds for the additional cost.
Perfect. So I'd like to amend that motion that the funding would come from undesignated funds.
Capital funds?
Undesignated capital. Yeah, we have a capital account for that.
Thank you.
I would second the change, the amendment.
Okay. So, Chief, this is obviously something that we need to be moving in this direction, right? At some point, if not now.
I don't disagree with that. Probably, it was 4 years ago. It was my first trade show as chief, where they were really marketing these through Ford. And, you know, it was an attractive idea. As with anything new, I want to make sure that it does what we need it to do.
Right.
So I'm not at all opposed to trying it. And if it works the way they say it's going to work, fantastic.
So-
Moving forward, you know.
So, while I agree with everything that Councilmember Brooke has said in her presentation, and I'm sure there's more, my biggest concern is making sure that these vehicles are going to be available when we need them. And so if there's a maintenance issue, who services can our Ford dealership here service these?
Yes.
Quickly, readily?
Yes.
Okay. And that's my biggest thing. is
Same.
making
It'll be
sure
the
that
same service agreement with
Okay.
Ford as we currently have.
All right.
And they have the capability to work
Just
on
want
all
to make
Ford
sure
products.
our fleet is on the street.
Yep.
And if you move forward, we will track it, and we'll figure out, with these 2 vehicles, we'll figure out what the actual gas savings are for the year. If there's additional maintenance expenses that we don't see in a regular one, whatever, we'll track all of it, pluses and minuses, and I guess my recommendation is we'll come back at the end of the year and give you a rundown of how it worked, and then we can decide moving forward if it still makes sense or not.
That would be great. I would love to see that data.
How soon would these be put into use?
Realistically, May,
May,
June.
So we'd have about 6 months worth of
Yeah,
data.
we're ordering them from the factory. So once I order them tomorrow, right, if approved, it'll be a significant amount of time.
Okay.
0 to 60, how fast?
I don't know. 0 to 25 in 5 seconds.
That's not very fast. All right, anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next up is item 6.5.
Essentially, the same discussion holds,
Okay,
is what I said earlier.
Chief?
I guess where would you like me to start? I go over what I said earlier.
Let me ask this. Sarah, were you here when Scott
I
made his
did.
presentation?
Yes, and Scott and I did chat earlier today as well, and I certainly heard his perspective and definitely value that. I just think at any point that we can move forward in a more ecologically conscientious way, we have a responsibility to do that, especially given that that's the direction we've heard from our constituents.
And I 100% agree with you on moving in that direction. And I'm at the pleasure of the council's decision. It's just, this is basically carbon neutral, the one I'm proposing, to the other one. The other thing is they have one available now. We won't have to wait till May or June to get it. So that's my recommendation. Before I forget too, it's 0 to 117.7 seconds on the police interceptor, but not on the 4-cylinder. Anyway, so I guess that's my opinion. The maintenance costs and that, it's hard for me to sit here and say this because I'm a true believer in hybrids. You can do a lot of research on it, and you're probably going to take, like I said earlier, less than 1% where a hybrid and a similar vehicle that aren't a hybrid have the same gas mileage. And the average is 24 miles to the gallon on the hybrid, and it's an average of 24 miles to the gallon on the Eco 2.3 small 4-cylinder. So with the price and the maintenance, that's my suggestion. I'm just, and it's available now, and we're having some issues with our vehicle now. As I talked to Councilmember Bruck earlier, our next major purchase without having issues is about 3 to 5 years away, roughly, for our fire truck. They're coming out with electric and that, and I will more than happily look at that or any other things we need in the meantime. The vehicle I drive is a lease vehicle. That's up in February. Would that make a lot more sense to buy? Yeah, absolutely, because we're putting more miles and stuff on. This vehicle that we're buying is about 4,000 miles a year. We don't idle. It's apples and oranges of it's the polar opposite of what the police do. And that's why my recommendation. I'm a firm believer and I'm a supporter, and we'll go the direction the council wants. Like I said, to me, all things are equal except we can get it now. So I feel comfortable making that decision.
How long do you expect to have this vehicle in service?
I would say 8 to 10 years.
And, okay, so after 10 years, it's unlikely that the hybrid's going to hold much more value than the...
Yeah, and like I say, it's an interesting debate here because it's a very unique situation. And so it's just basically providing you the data that I've researched and have come up with, so...
And it's difficult because we can't really put a price tag on what those carbon emissions and what that reduction would be. And maybe this is just us starting the conversation. Maybe this is one where I do see your perspective, but I want us to really make very thoughtful decisions as we move forward with vehicles that are more part of our daily use, that we make this transition and get our city where we are ultimately working towards all of our city-owned vehicles being hybrid or electric vehicles. So I appreciate the conversation, and I'm fine to move forward that way unless other people have strong opinions, knowing that we're making this commitment to be really mindful about what we purchase moving forward as a city.
I do have one question about that, and I don't know if Mike Mraz is here tonight.
He's hiding back there.
Are you hiding back there? I guess my question would be, are there any other vehicles in your fleet, Mike, that would be similar to the mileage here, that it might be worth seeing what the true cost of this vehicle would be? I hate to put you on the spot, Mike.
My vehicle that I primarily use would probably be similar to what Scott would be purchasing tonight. I don't have anything in the 2022 CIP to purchase a vehicle. It'd be 2023 where we start entertaining to upgrade some of the pickups that we have in our fleet, but the one off the top of my head would be mine. The other ones at our daily drivers for our staff, I mean, they're out of the garage every day, all day long, so I mean, they're substantial idling and miles put on them.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And we typically go more towards a diesel option, just because of the winter plowing that we do with some of our pickups. But obviously, you know, we'll have that discussion here in a couple of years when.
Gotcha. So what Chief St. Martin is purchasing is not necessarily apples to what your fleet is?
Correct.
Sounds like it's very different.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot different apples.
That was the only argument that I would make to maybe.
And just to note, my note for my notes is that for all future vehicles coming forward, we'll have a hybrid option for consideration. If it's practicable, you know, if it's available, we'll have the option and we'll lay out the pros and cons of what we think with them, but we'll have that for all future vehicle purchases.
That would be great, and really ultimately moving towards electric vehicles.
So Chief, just so I understand, is the argument just that because it's not used that much?
No, it's so, I don't know if you heard earlier, the average mileage for the police interceptor hybrid is 24. The average mileage for this EcoBoost 4-cylinder is 24. So there's absolutely no difference in carbon footprint from either one of them, because that 24 is the gas versus that overall. Does that make sense? And part of the reason is because of the size of the motor that's required for the police interceptor is so much larger, they can't downsize that. And now if they had a smaller motor, maybe with a hybrid and that same Explorer, maybe it'd be different. So, I mean, the one thing that may come out of this is obviously some beta testing we're buying two similar vehicles in the same year. Ours is gonna have less miles on, but probably good to have that and say over time, 5 years from now, they can look at maintenance and all the other stuff, and it would be, maybe that's another good way to look at it, is we have that to track and keep track of it and see what.
Okay.
So at this point, should I make the motion to proceed with Scott's recommendation in the consent agenda? I make the motion that we proceed purchasing the gas engine, was it a Ford Explorer as well?
Explorer.
Second.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks,
Thank
Chief.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item 6.11, approve election inspectors. Joyce?
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve the list of election inspectors with the exception of John Kraft.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Can we, I don't know that we can do this.
We can.
Can we exclude someone that's provided by the party?
So the lists come, I did some research this afternoon, the list comes specifically from the parties. Each party is required to submit. It's council's discretion as to who they appoint, but you're appointing both Democrats and Republicans, and I see on your list you've got folks that aren't designated as being affiliated with any party. So council's discretion, but you do have folks that are affiliated with both parties coming directly from the parties. So.
And their role is just to on election day to make sure stuff is legit, basically?
No, these are the actual poll workers that we will be using.
Yeah.
So they would have some sort of role in the not, obviously we can't use all these,
Okay.
I mean, this is more poll workers than we need by far. So we will select poll workers, and we have to have party balance and things like that when we
There's
select.
training, there's,
Yep.
yeah.
So we will select poll workers to use, and, you know, they'll go through the training, we'll have party balance like we're required to have and things. This is just the list that we have to choose those poll workers from.
Okay.
So does this pool include what's known as like poll judges, or?
It's everybody. It's the
It
chief
is.
inspectors, it's, yeah.
Anybody you see working at the election, these are not the observers. The observers is a completely separate issue where
Got it.
people
Okay.
from different parties sign up. We have a designated area for them, they watch.
Yeah, with a whole set
Yes.
of different rules.
These are actual,
I probably said
these
the
are
wrong
actual the
term.
poll workers.
Got it.
So,
This is a statutory requirement, so by
Correct.
December, you are required to approve an identified list of people from whom you can choose to run your elections.
And who makes the
don't-
choice on who gets chosen to work, or?
So currently, I have a letter gonna go out, because there's training, because a lot of these, I don't know if they've been trained or not, so they have to have 1 to 2 hours of training before elections to work. So from there, we go by availability, and it has to be equal, you know, based on both parties. So
Okay.
it's a crapshoot, kind of. I mean, how you go through the list and who's available and who's not, and if someone's on the ballot, they can't work, that type of thing. So it's a whole,
you'll also get people that will sign up through their parties, check the box, but then when you actually contact them to say, do you want to be a poll worker and take the training? They're like, wait, what? Why?
right, and that's
No.
kind of the purpose of the letter, to
So
see
you-
if that's gonna help us narrow down to
Yep.
who really is interested and who's not.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of rules, like they absolutely cannot become partisan at all in
Correct.
those
Correct.
settings.
Yep,
I'd like to comment, because this doesn't look good for us to be cherry picking people. We've never done it before. It's partisan and it's petty, because I have a challenge with your husband being on the same list, but I'm not going to object to him. These people are volunteering. It's not for us politicians to be jumping in on that kind of stuff. It looks bad. The optics terrible. Tim Hall should not be on the list.
I agree with you that it wasn't an easy decision to make, but due to some of a lot of the public information that John has put out, I just feel very uncomfortable approving him as a.
I would caution you in suggesting people, because that whole list, probably people have issues you could pull out from something. What you're doing is political, and I don't think that's our job.
And I disagree that it's political, but
It's, we're looking at partisan lists here. It's very political.
well, that is true. But I mean, my objection is not.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I just said my objection is not. It's due to the inappropriateness of his Facebook pages and his website pages.
Do you have examples of that?
Not with me, but I've seen it. Can't unsee it.
Again, it seems like it's going down a road we shouldn't go down.
I certainly don't, and my question then is to Becky, and obviously you've only got a couple years here experience with our elections, but you have been a clerk for some time. Have you experienced this before, where people have been challenged and
No.
taken off?
no. And there's a process. I mean, they do have a process that you can reach out to the political parties if there's issues, that you can contact the chair of the political party if, for some reason, whatever issue, if they're used. But it all comes down to if they're trained and willing to do it too. Just because they're on the list doesn't mean they're going to, when it comes to, they might have, doesn't mean they're necessarily actually going to work either. I mean, we go through, we asked, he says, yes, he's interested, he's on the list. It's approved list. I have 97, we'll never use all of them in 1 year. There's just not enough room for them. So,
And Becky, I'm assuming that on the actual election day, if there was some kind of a problem with a volunteer, that you or your staff would
yes,
supervise and
there's
sort that
procedures
out
to
on the
follow
day
for
of?
that as well. Yep,
They would,
Okay.
yep.
they're very closely watched, because that's a big part of why you have those election observers. I think what Bill was talking about
Yeah.
is to make sure that there's no nothing that a poll worker does would, be out of line or, not within statutory requirements and things like that. So they will be watched very closely. And to be honest, I think with the last few elections and moving forward, it's going to be they're going to be highly observed. And we've never, luckily, ever had a problem with that before.
No.
But, it's one of those things where I just think in the environment now, you're going to.
And it ultimately
have
comes down to
these
the
issues.
chief inspector and the assistant chief inspector. It's their polling place, they're in charge of it. They have way more training. They have to go through more in-depth training than an election worker.
Sure.
So they're in charge of the polling place. It comes down to their discretion.
I think the other thing that's really important to understand as well is that the legislature has not said, this is a non-political process. You have to pick people who are non-political. In fact, the legislature has recognized that it is a political process, which is why it requires the parties to submit the names of their folks so that communities like ours can look at it and say, okay, well, I need one Democrat for each Republican. And so it's not an apolitical process, it is a recognized political process where you're ensuring that you have both Democrats and Republicans and some folks who are not affiliated who are all involved in this process. So, I would caution the council on pulling names. Ultimately it is a process that recognizes that politics is part of this, and ultimately it's for the city to make sure that it complies, to make sure that there's balance, that we have Republicans and Democrats involved in this process so that our elections are run fairly and equally.
Well, one last thing that I'd like to add is that I think my position on partisanship here for our elections is pretty clear. It's been clear from the first day I ran. I'm not a partisan. I reject partisan politics being injected into our local municipal elections. It's hard to stop sometimes, but my concern here is that if this were to happen, we're going to have a tit for tat. And next time we're going to have somebody coming in saying, we want somebody from your list pulled now, and that just starts to spiral into just the type of partisanship here that I would like to try to avoid. And I just don't see it as a win for us, so.
Is there behavior that we think that should keep someone from becoming an election judge? So for example, at one of our meetings, he was wearing white supremacy clothing. He also is calling for civil war. This is just inappropriate behavior.
I think this, Nick, Mayor, point of order, this is an uncomfortable situation. She's saying stuff to somebody who's not even here. It should not be talked about like that. Person is not here to defend himself.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's not approved.
Move to approve the list as is.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the list as is. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on granting the available reserve Class B beer / Class B liquor license application.
I had asked for this to come back. The other applicant is not here, so I will move to approve Regma for the liquor license that is available.
We've already got the motion and second from the last meeting.
What was
But-
that? I don't remember that one.
I moved to approve
Oh.
Keys Cafe, and Sarah seconded it, and then Randy asked
Was
to
it
take.
tabled? Did I?
Clarify as well, just to help the conversation, the other applicant has withdrawn their application.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully that makes it easier.
Whatever.
All right, so we have a motion and a second before us. Everybody understand the motion?
So this is for the
Keys
Keys
Restaurant?
Restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody good? Everybody clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on liquor license update ordinance 24-21, Phipps license edition.
Congratulations, by the way.
And thank you for being here tonight.
So we're on to the next agenda item.
Yeah, yes, the Phipps license edition.
Right. So just to kind of give other members a little bit background about why I kind of put this one coming forward is I've had the pleasure in the last couple of weeks working with Darby Lunsford, who is the new executive director of the Phipps, being involved with a strategic task force with the Phipps as an arts organization, and coming to realize that you can't go and enjoy a show and see some art and have a drink in hand, which would be another revenue source for the Phipps, as well as just, every time that I go to the theater at intermission, grab a glass of wine or have a beer or whatever. So that's kind of the background. I brought it up to Aaron, who also worked with Nick on it. So.
Yep, so like Councilmember Alm said, once he brought this forward, we had the conversation with Nick about it. So the thing that we can do right now is make the amendment to the ordinance as presented that would allow them to have the basically Class B beer license, which is fermented malt beverage. So it's beer, it's malt-based beverages like White Claw, things like that. You could do those sort of things. Wine is a little more complicated. We've kind of looked at it a little bit. I mean, really to do that, they would have to have a full liquor license, and as we know, those are hard to come by. But they could apply for a full license when next time that we have one available. The other option as well, for something where they want to do more than just maybe beer, they could have a licensed caterer come in and provide that service in their facility to sell the wine or hard liquor if they want to go that route. So this will allow them for us to change what we can to let them serve the beer. And then the other, if they want to do more, they'll have to look at some other options.
And then I also asked Mr. Lunsford to be here to answer any questions that you might have for Darby.
Welcome. Anybody have any questions?
I just had one about the licensed caterer. So do we have a lot of licensed caterers that have liquor license so that they would have access to serve wine? Do we have a lot of those in our city?
We have none.
Yeah, that
So
may,
that's not
that may
even-
not be an option.
So we're talking about how we have to adjust to maybe let that kind of happen.
Okay.
To be able to serve the off-site and things like that. Yep.
Yeah, the licensing requirements they're interesting, they're convoluted to say the least. But, below your full on-sale license, you have a beer license, which is what we're talking about, our fermented malt beverage. Your wine licenses in Wisconsin, which are Class C licenses, can only be issued to restaurants. You cannot issue them to non-restaurants.
Okay.
So we can issue a Class B fermented beverage, malt beverage license to a non-restaurant. We cannot issue a Class C to a non-restaurant. So if they want to move to wine, they need to have a full liquor license as opposed to just a beer license. So whether we can accommodate through using another provider is something that we'll investigate. Certainly it's something that's commonly done across the river. But whether it can actually be done here is something we'd have to take a look at.
We're hoping we can figure that one out to give them more options.
Right.
Okay, so right now we're talking beer.
Yep.
And the White Claw, like in the Trulies, those types of things.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I'll move to suspend.
Nice job, Darby.
Second.
Was there a
You
second?
suspended the rules.
Suspending the rules.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance, the amendment to ordinance 24-21 as presented.
Yeah.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Darby. Good to have you here. Discussion and possible action on next steps for city properties at 222 Walnut Street, the former fire station and 221 Commercial Street, Williams Public Parking Lot. So this is back because we had suggested that we do an RFP on that lot, and that RFP should have been done probably in the summertime, but because of COVID and everything and the uncertainty of what was happening, we just held off on this. So what I am recommending tonight is that we do not go to RFP to develop that property. And rather, what I would like to see done is, I'd like to have the council, either tonight or in the future, decide, well, what I would like to see is, I'd like to see the building raised, and I would like to turn that into surface lot parking, as an addition to the parking over there already with the Williams lot, and see how that goes until we can get some critical data finally from our parking utility, something that we've been waiting for a couple of years now that we have not been able to get because of COVID and everything else that has interceded in the meantime. But I think it would be important to add additional parking, reassess that perhaps in 5 years to see if that lot could be developed or if we need to continue to use it as a surface lot.
I'd like to see it raised. I'd move to raise it, and then I'd say 3 years. Why wait so long? I don't know, maybe somebody would come along sooner.
Potentially, but there's going to be and that's fine, that's fine.
Just wiggle room is what I'm looking for,
Sure.
I guess.
Yep.
And I would say if you want to make a motion, staff will have to go out and secure bids for demolition
We
and
go through the
raising
process,
and
yeah.
whatnot. So
Right.
just authorize staff to move forward
So
with that
moved.
process.
We'd bring back then quotes or the bids for the demolition, anything related to it. My chair is a disaster. We would bring that back to a future meeting. So, yeah. And then also would be the cost, clearly not just demolish, but we'd also want to turn it into usable parking space. So we'd bring back both, basically the cost to do the demo and then site prep and everything to turn into parking. We actually did work. We talked about this a while back. We did work up some plans already for how to reconfigure that whole lot to maximize the space for parking. So we'll bring those back then too at the same time. And so all you're approving right now is for us to get the numbers and bring them back.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, so perhaps you want to consider an amendment to that to get Aaron a new chair.
I'm going to steal Paul's next time. So
We've
just
trying.
that
We've
one,
been
but
trying.
it's even worse.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, so just so I'm clear, so last time we did put in our RFP, and we got the proposal for, wasn't it like a condo and like a?
No, we actually did not issue the RFP. So we had interest from an adjacent developer that was talking about potentially using that area as part of their development, but we didn't want to go with that without doing an RFP to see if there's other, you know what I mean?
What we voted on was to give the Gerard brothers exclusivity for a year.
Just try to figure something out.
Right, so, and that year had expired, and they never came back and asked for any additional time to that. Nobody in the meantime has come to us with plans to develop it, and they have since reduced the total scale of their development that would not require any use of Williams or the fire station.
Yep. So we don't have any interest in it right now. We know we have the need for the parking, and so this is a good way to, it doesn't preclude us from in the future doing something with that site. I mean, basically it'll just be more shovel ready and make it more desirable by doing it.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if there's a hesitancy to put out the RFP because we don't think the timing is right, or we just think that it's not in the works right now?
Well, it could be answered a lot of different ways.
Yeah, but I mean,
Let's just start with this. The need right now for us, I think, is paramount, okay? It supersedes anybody else's need. And nobody else has actually come to us expressing a desire to develop that since the expiration of the agreement with the Gerards.
What about before that? Was there any interest in the building itself and using it for any other purpose?
We would have a couple people come in and be like, oh, can we rent it for an auto detailing space or something? But, their actual what they were looking for doesn't, it really wasn't a benefit to us.
Okay.
For it. Like I said, our need, as we know, is parking. We definitely have that,
Yeah.
need. And so I think this is a good way to, in the interim, before we decide what we want to do with it, if we want to keep it for parking, if we want to do something else with it, get the building down, get the parking in place. And then in the future, if we decide to go for RFP, we still can. I mean, just because you have a parking lot on there doesn't preclude it from,
Right.
going out for some development proposal later. But for us to keep letting the building sit, we are using it just because it's there, but it's not a necessary thing to use. And we would, we're not going to maintain it. You know what I mean? So if there's a problem, we're not going to fix it if there's whatever. So for us, we're using it basically just because it's there and we can stick a few vehicles in it. But
Arguably, it enhances the appeal of the property with that.
I would agree it
building
does,
down
having it
and
down.
just to have it graded.
Yep.
Are we sure that there's not going to be any, like, more Christmas movies? Where
I was just going to ask if there's a market for firefighter
We
movies.
did protect it for them for last year, but I believe they're moving away from fire departments for the future ones.
We're going to put notice out that if they want to shoot a movie of the fire station being burned down and by our fire department.
Quick question from Mike Moraz, he's in the corner
Yeah.
again. Is there any interest for Public Works for that space, or is there anything that it could be useful for any kind of storage or anything for Public Works, or are we sitting good where we are?
Aaron kind of touched base on that. We are currently using that for some overflow storage of Public Works trailers and stuff like that that make it easier for us to move snow plowing equipment in and out of the shop. So obviously my long-term vision is to, build and construct a newer facility that houses all of our stuff in one spot. So I don't want to add another building. We're in 4 right now. I don't want to make it 5 different
Right.
buildings that we're in. It's just not economical. And so,
Right. Okay.
but I appreciate the thought, Paul.
I have 2 follow-up questions for you. One, I just want to make sure that this is also in line with what, from the Community Development Office, if this fits with what they were looking for as well. And then 2, I have heard from somebody who did ask me to keep them informed if this was going out for an RFP. So I don't know if I should put that person in touch with you prior to this or not. But I know that this is
The use is
just,
probably going to be based on a vacant land anyways, not
Okay.
existing buildings. So I don't think one precludes the other.
Okay.
We can still proceed this way, and if we have somebody that comes forward later that wants it, that can all be part of the process still. So I wouldn't worry about it stopping it.
Mike and I have talked about this for a while.
okay,
And back in the summertime, actually, when the RFP, we had put off the RFP for several months, I think, and then, and so when that came up again, we said, well, let's wait and see what happens with the virus first of all, see what's going to happen with parking downtown. And then in recent conversations, it was, the best utility, I think, for that site right now, Mike agrees, is parking.
and would that be metered parking ultimately? Is that
Beg
what?
pardon?
Would that be more metered
Yes.
spaces as opposed to?
Yes.
Don't
Well,
get.
you
I
what?
know we need
mean,
more parking.
That's at the discretion of the council. But
Okay.
the intention is that would be part of the parking utility and it would be paid parking.
Thank you for the clarifications.
And is the motion to get a cost estimate on raising it and the parking lot, what it would be, and then we'd come back at a future date and look at it?
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on council vacancy appointment process.
Yep, so I'd asked at the last meeting that this be placed on the agenda, and I don't have an answer, and I'm not looking for an answer this evening, but I am looking for some discussion on what might be helpful in the future. And a couple things I'm thinking are, because we never know when these vacancies come up, but I want to help future councils sort of avoid some of the difficulty that we've had with trying to replace Jim's seat and whatnot, and also seats in the past as well. So I don't know if we direct city staff, but I have some thoughts. I think one thing that should happen is there should be a time deadline. I don't know if that's 9 months prior to a election or whatever the council thinks would be a good time deadline for securing a special election. What I'm thinking is kind of like almost like a flow chart kind of deal, where if this person leaves, a year into their term, right, it automatically would go to special election. If this happens, 9 months or less, maybe the council takes applications for a month, and then the thought I have is actually just a lottery. We just pick a person from anybody who's interested in that district, because that avoids the political aspects that we've talked about. It avoids the council playing politics. And ultimately, my interest is that there's representation. Obviously, anybody who would be in that position is accountable to voters, and that would be a very short period of time, whether that's 6 months or 9 months or whatnot. So I don't have the full answer, but I think I wanted to just float a few ideas out there to see what maybe you guys thought. And if at the end of that, we could direct maybe city staff to come up with some more of the details, and we could look at it at a future meeting. But basically, I want to, and that's what, Mr. Mayor, you were talking about, is somehow we have to solve this in terms of future things. So that's just my thought. And again, I don't have all the answers, but those are 2 thoughts.
I really like that idea. I like the idea of kind of, setting some time, some dates, to add some clarity to it. I do feel really sad that there's not somebody sitting next to me here. And I feel sad for the residents. And I know we have an interim solution. I'm not sure it's the best solution, but I certainly think having some of those things spelled out would certainly make it cleaner and better for the future.
I would like to see what other communities do, and then, of course, what is allowed under our state law, too.
How do you want to proceed?
If you guys have any thoughts, do you have any?
I just had a question for Mr. Vivian, just from, because this is a state statute piece, right? That says it's up to the council to do either this or that. Can we put rules around it?
Yeah, the council has the discretion to appoint and to fill the seat however it so desires, whether it be with an appointment or with a special election. That being said, where you're different than other communities is that by your ordinances, you require 4 votes to appoint the open seat. So in most communities, it's done by a majority vote. In your community, it's done by 4, because that's what your ordinance says. So that's the challenge, because to get 4 out of 5 to vote in favor of any one particular person is challenging in and of itself. It's designed that way to try to get people to coalesce around one particular person and really to drive cooperation and collaboration, as opposed to have a 3-2 split on that particular vote. But that's where you're different from other communities. In other communities, it's a majority vote. The majority wins out, that person gets seated, and away you go.
So I guess the other option, just hearing that, is you could change the ordinance to make it a 3-2 vote, if that's what the council thought, or stick with some sort of a lottery system. I mean, part of me, what I was thinking was jury duty. I mean, this is how you get picked for jury duty. You get picked. But this would be different in that people would apply for it, so it wouldn't just be a random person. You would want to, you would want to take the commitment on. But I don't know. I just think anything to, again, get representation and try to take out the political aspect of it, I think is good.
So here's just off the top of my head, Paul. I kind of like the idea of a lottery. I really, however, like the idea of a special election. But here, for example, we're running into Jim was done on the 30th and filings open for his seat on the 1st, right, for the normal cycle, right? And so it doesn't give anybody a lot of time, even if they're appointed, it only gives them a few months, right? And then if they're not running for re-election, and in this case, it's probably unlikely that, they wouldn't be running for re-election because
the district.
Yeah, the lines have
And
changed.
just to be clear, I'm not talking about Jim's seat. What I'm talking about is.
Well, that's just as an example.
Yeah.
So, but, so I think, so let's use Bill's seat as another, as an example where, same thing happened. The council did not come to a conclusion and it went to a special election. And you can see the result was fantastic.
Hey.
Right.
So, and that to me gets the politics out too. I love
Right.
getting the politics out of these elections. I just hate it. But here's what I see happening. If we go to a lottery system, I could see a partisan group saying, well, if we put up 10 people, we stand a much better chance of one of those 10 being elected or selected, as opposed to if somebody else just puts in one, or somebody that's not even aligned with any type of organization that just wants to volunteer and they get caught up in the middle of the politics of this. So if we were to do something like that, I would think that we should make them go out and get the signatures just like everybody else. But then again, you could have that group having a big party one night and they all sign everybody's papers. So the politics that's the toughest thing, is how do you get the politics out? And I really believe that the best way to do that is with a special election. Now, does it make sense to hold a special election 4 months before a regular election cycle? No, it doesn't. So again,
That's why I think the
your
date,
argument about
the
having
date is
some
important.
timeframes for-
Right. I think if you have time to do the special, that would be the preferable way to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, so I get that. Bill, your seat was vacant for,
June before the April election.
wow.
But, I mean, the special election happened in November.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So then there was representation there.
Okay.
But I really like the idea of putting some sort of guidelines, if you will, for us and for future councils, just so that there's clarity. I would love to direct staff to, I guess I'll make that motion to direct staff. I don't think there's been a motion.
No, not yet.
No,
To direct staff to add clarity to vacant seats and how we fill them.
I would second it.
Well, I've got a couple thoughts. One thought, and as you say about changing the ordinance we have, I don't know what happened with Jim's seat in particular, but that should have been vacated right away. When we knew it, he shouldn't have waited that long, and that's what we got caught up with. Regardless of the state statute loophole you found, Nick, or whatever was found, that, we need to have a final date on that sooner than later. That just, I heard it from many people that was, something was funny there. I mean, he was running the city, voting on things when he was living in Arizona. And that is not representing District 4. My other thought is that the cleanest thing is an election. And if we get the timing right, then it would be a lot easier for us to have that special election instead of getting it so close to the regular election. Either way, the optics look terrible on that, in my mind. So the cleanest way is to have a special election. Let those people in that district vote, not us. And that's someone who was appointed, but there was a completely different way they did it back then. We had two of us interview while we were sitting here, an actual job almost interview. And it was very particular. It worked. I didn't agree with it. Even I got appointed, but this just didn't seem right to me. It should be the people in the district that make that decision.
Okay.
So maybe Randy, I like what you're saying about, like, if somebody moves out of Hudson, that could be part of this policy too. You
Yeah.
could say, I mean, you
Sure.
could say when you move out,
Yeah.
you forfeit your seat, basically. You know what I mean? And then that sets the process in motion.
For sure.
Well, the way the law is set up, to answer the question, ultimately, it is the council that decides when a person no longer meets the status of the qualifications of serving in that council role. So, it's another piece of it to look at it to say that ultimately it's nobody other than the council that makes that determination, and then ultimately that declares that seat vacant. So
I don't want to beat a dead dog, but I don't mean it like that. But who decided that Jim would stay on that long?
Well,
The council, we didn't vote on that.
It would have had to been an affirmative motion from the council to not allow him.
correct.
Okay. Right.
Which is where I think this whole conversation is good, because we can just clean these things up. You know, it would just be nice to have a policy in place. And so that way also you as council members know that if for some reason you're leaving, if you're planning on retiring, moving, whatever it might be, you also then know what it means. So, well, if I make my decision by, July 1st, we'll have a special election. But if I wait not until September 1st, then we're going to have to go through this alternate process. It may actually help in in your decisions too, if you decide to move on for some reason. So I think having a policy in place would be helpful for everybody. So.
Agree.
All right, so,
Motion on the floor in second.
okay, motion. Thank you.
All in favor?
All right, everybody understand it?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I have us going into special session next, is that right?
Yeah.
Before we do that, all right, because everybody will be gone, and people that are tuning in on TV will be gone. We're already losing Darby. So before everybody kind of tunes out and signs off, I wanted to say, I think that everybody got the memo today, got the email that Aaron is moving back into Hudson. And I'm delighted for that. I'm glad that he's going to be back with us. And I think that's an important thing. And like I say, I'm delighted. So glad that's happening, Aaron.
Thank you.
We missed you in the times that you were not here.
I appreciate that.
And then also, I just wanted to get this out of the way for everybody that's tuning in. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, all the other holidays that people recognize and celebrate. I hope the merriest of and happiest of all holiday seasons for everybody. So with that, discussion and possible action to convene in a closed session pursuant to A.12 Wisconsin statute, section 1985, sub 1, sub C, to consider performance evaluation and compensation relating to the city administrator. We'll do them both at the same time. Closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 19.85, sub 1, sub G, to confer with legal counsel concerning potential litigation, restraining order against library patron.
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call.
Morissette,
Yes.
Alms,
Yes.
DeZiel,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. We will step across the hall to go into closed session. Back in open session.
I'd like to move that we approve the suggested litigation for the matter with the city of Hudson from legal counsel.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I think that's the only motion coming out of there, right?
No, there's one more. We're still.
Oh, yeah, we have to,
9.1.
compensation, yep.
Yeah, I would like to move to approve the compensation increase for the city administrator to 0.7%?
With the step increase.
With the step increase.
With the step increase, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's effective January 1st, is that correct?
Correct.
Second?
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Becky, do you have the hybrid out there? Is that,
Yeah, I started it. No.
yeah, you did. It's, I saw the headlights coming in the
Yep,
office.
sure did.
All right, once again, hey, I hope everybody has a great Christmas and holiday season. Look forward to seeing you all, if not before the beginning of the year, right after. Who we got? Go Irish.
Gophers.
Go Gophers. Who do they have?
Oh, West Virginia.
Oh, that'll be a good game.
Stupid Phoenix.
Move to
Arizona.
adjourn?
What bowl?
I'll second that.
What? Who, what?
All right, there's a motion and a second to adjourn.
Second.
I did.
Thank you.
One of these outside room.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.